During this lecture, we're going to talk about inheritance and polymorphism. Now, we have talked a little bit about these earlier, but this time we're going to get into much more detail, and hopefully you'll have a much better understanding of what these important topics mean. So let's start by talking about inheritance. What the heck is it? Well, inheritance is where we're able to manage both generic and specific things at the same time. And I'm going to use the same diagram we used earlier, where we have a vehicle, which is a generic class, and inheriting that vehicle is an automobile, which is a little more specific class, and inheriting then from there is a Corvette, which is an even more specific class. And within each of these classes are member variables and methods that are specific to that kind of a class. The vehicle just has some pretty generic elements. But when we get to automobile now, for instance, the wheels are 4, because we have 4 wheels on an automobile. Not sure what happens if we end up with a 3-wheeled automobile, and we have the ability to shift gears. In a Corvette then, we even get more specific. We've got our convertible top, and we got our method, drive fast. I guess automobiles and vehicles don't drive fast, but I hope that you can see from this kind of funny illustration that the further down we go, the more specific we get. That's where subclasses and superclasses come in. Those that are at the top are superclasses, and those that are at the bottom are subclasses. So vehicle is a superclass of both automobile and Corvette. And automobile and Corvette are subclasses of vehicle. Now there's 2 other elements I want to talk about related to inheritance here. The super keyword and the superclass constructor. There are going to be times when you're, for instance, writing your method in an automobile that you want to refer to something in the superclass, and you do that using the super keyword. And there are going to be times when when you're writing your constructor for one of your subclasses, that you want to invoke the constructor in the superclass. And you can do that, and you can do it as long as you put it as the first line in your constructor. That's important to remember, because if you don't, it won't work. Another important topic related to inheritance is overriding. You'll notice that in vehicle, automobile, and Corvette, there is a start and a stop method. They are overwritten in automobile and Corvette. They overwrite what's in the generic class above them. Now, when the computer is ready to invoke the stop method, if it's in Corvette, it's going to use the most specific stop method, or the one that's specific to Corvette. It always chooses the most specific one. If there's a method that in vehicle that's not in automobile or Corvette, it will find the one in vehicle and invoke that one. And then the last thing I want to talk about is protected members. Similar in some ways to private members, protected members are only seen within the class or within the inheritance chain of that class. So if I make motor protected, it's not just available in vehicle, but it's available in automobile and Corvette as well. However, if I'm calling from outside of this inheritance chain, I don't see motor. It's not available for me to call or to use. So that's inheritance. Now let's talk a little bit about polymorphism. Polymorphism, that big weird word, which actually means changing forms. What does that mean to object-oriented programming, though? Well, it means that we're able to use all the aspects of inheritance together to allow an object to be invoked generically without knowing the specific object that's being called. We need to use inheritance for it. We need to use this thing called overriding that we talked about. And what it allows us to do, if we follow the little diagram down here, I've got an array of vehicles. Okay. Now they have different subtypes. Some are cars, some are trucks, and some are motorcycles. Okay. Now, if I was to loop through this array, and let's say that I wanted to print out the information for car, truck, and motorcycle. If I didn't have polymorphism, I'd have to know which type it was. Not just that it's a vehicle, but that it's a car or a truck or a motorcycle, to know which method to call. Okay? Well, with polymorphism, all we have to know is that it's a vehicle. And the computer takes care of the rest of it for us. It's very powerful, and it makes our programming easier to understand and read. So that's just talk. Let's look at an example of how we would do it. And we're going to do this hands-on, but let me just kind of set the stage here. We're going to go back to that DVD collection that we've been using, and we're going to extend it. It's really going to become a media collection now, because we're going to be storing more than just DVDs. We're going to store CDs, and let's face it, at home I've got this huge stack of 8-track tapes that need managed. And so we're going to store 8-track tapes too. Now, we're going to create a new superclass called media, and DVDs, CDs, and 8-track tapes will inherit from it. So we've got our inheritance chain. And we're going to override the toString method in each of the different types with different information in them. And then we're going to, going back to our DVD collection example, we're going to loop through our list of DVDs, CDs, and 8-tracks, and we're going to print out the elements in them. And you'll notice that it will print a different set of elements for an 8-track than it does for a DVD or a CD. This is going to be fun. Let's get to it. Well, we are back again to Java. And in this little mini lesson, I'm going to show you how to use inheritance and polymorphism. And we're going to be enhancing that DVD collections program we wrote, creating it, really genericizing it into a media collection. So what do we have right now? Well, we have a DVD class that we already wrote, and we have our DVD array list application. Okay, so let's first of all, we're going to be creating a new class called media, and this new class, this is going to be the superclass, and I'm going to put, this is going to hold the name, because DVDs, CDs, and 8-track tapes all have something in common. They all have a name, whatever the name of it is. Okay, I'm going to make this, I'm going to use that new keyword protected, and we're going to create a name, and then we're going to create a constructor. Got to spell it right. And all it's going to do, oops, got to take a string as a parameter, and it's going to set the value of name. Okay, not too tough. And then let's create an override for toString. Of course, this one is overriding the generic object toString that everybody has. And we're going to return like that. Okay, so there's media. Now let's come back to DVD and let's make a couple of changes to DVD. The first thing we want to do is we want to make it extend media. Okay. The next thing that we want it to do is media already has a name. So we're going to take that out. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use that super constructor right here and pass it name, because we're gathering name at this level instead of a level up. Oh, extend, it should be extends. Okay. All right, so that takes care of the constructor. And then down here in the toString, instead of using our own name, we're going to use that keyword super, and we're going to pull the name that comes out of media. Okay, so that's the first change we're going to make. Now we're going to create two more classes, one called CD, the other one called 8-track. We can't use the number 8 to start out a class, so we have to do it this way. All right, now I'm just going to kind of grab here from DVD just to make this quicker. And I'm going to start by dumping it over here in CD. And remember, CD is going to extends media also. And so with the CD, we're going to have, obviously we're going to have a name like we did there, but we're going to have different other member variables. We're going to have artist, oops, it's a string, and we're going to have, instead of rating, we're going to have genre. Okay, and so we're going to be instantiating that one, and we're going to just have to make some changes to this for artist and for genre. And then, of course, they have to come down here. Oops. And then, instead of year, artist, genre, and then I'm going to make a copy of this one, and we'll, for 8-track, the only difference between a CD and an 8-track, of course there are a lot of differences, but that we're going to be capturing here, is a new member variable that is, we're going to call it num tracks. It'll capture the number of tracks. And so we'll add that, because this has got to be, we've got to extend media, and this has got to be 8-track. And then we're going to be adding to the end of it. And then adding here. And then adding to the end of this. We'll put it down here, plus. Okay. So now we have our 4 classes. We have media, and then DVD, CD, and 8-track inherit from media. Now let's go to our implementation class, DVD array. So rather than mess with this, I'm going to create a new class, and we'll call it media array list. But we're going to just take the contents of DVD array list, and we're just going to copy it in there for this. So it should function fine the way it is, because a DVD is a media. I'm going to make one little change here, because what we're going to do is we're going to do what we call cast anything that comes out of that array to be of type media. Okay. Now if I was to run this right now, it's just going to run like it used to run. But let's make it a little more interesting in that let's add to the list here a CD, and we'll use one of my favorites, The Essential Journey by Journey, which is considered hard rock. It's not that hard a rock, by the way. And then let's add the 8-track right off the top of my list, which is Queen Greatest Hits. From Queen, of course. Also considered hard rock. And it has 8 tracks, interestingly enough. Okay, now our collection of media doesn't just have DVDs in it anymore. It has DVDs, 8 tracks, and CDs in it. But when we come down here and loop through the loop and then we print out each of those, the computer's going to need to figure out, okay, is this a DVD, an 8-track, or a CD? When it does its printout. And so, but it'll do that because of polymorphism, and because of inheritance, and because of overriding, which we've illustrated here. So with all of that in mind, let's run this sucker. Now you see that it printed our 3 DVDs, and then it printed different data for our CD, and even different data on top of that for our 8-track. That is polymorphism at work. Well, I hope that this example has helped you to understand inheritance and polymorphism just a little better.